to our podcast show. Who you gonna call? Pacino!
Okay.
Hello and welcome back to Al Pacino's Prison Scene, the podcast where we look at movies that objectively have no deeper meaning and we think about it. As always, I'm your host, and with me is my co-host, Jake Ferrier.
Hey, Dan, I'm having a party the other day. You should come. I work out a lot. I eat all my nutritional veggies.
Louis Tully is the best part of this movie, hands down.
100% agree. Well, yes.
So we are, of course, discussing the 1984 classic Ghostbusters, which is actually my all-time favorite comedy.
You see, Thomas, I'll be honest. Ghostbusters is good, but it just doesn't hit it for me like you, I guess. It's great, but it's just not. I don't know.
You're just a non-believer.
Maybe.
All right, apologizes.
All I'm gonna say is that I've never seen a ghost before. I'll put it out there.
We'll get to that. Apologies to the listener. I'm about to eat a Cheeto, so you're probably about to hear some crunch. But right after I do that, I'll get into the recap. Okay. So,
don't talk with your mouth full.
All right, I just swallowed. We're good now.
All right.
So, Ghostbusters, right? It opens in the library, as all great movies do. And it's kind of going crazy, but nobody seems to notice anything. So, like, books are flying from shelf to shelf, and all these cards are flying everywhere.
Hey, is this a recap?
Yeah.
Well, just slow down.
Why?
Okay, before we get into this, we gotta do some business, all right? Because we have forgotten the past few episodes to rate the movies based on our
the ready or not principle.
The ready or not principle. So we got to go back. What do we missed? What did we miss?
Scooby-Doo and Monty Python.
Okay, so we need to. All right, Scooby-Doo.
The 10,000 Volt Ghost and the Knight together, they kind of blow up, but they're not actually real people. So 3.5 stars, I guess.
Okay, 3.5. I'll agree with that because it was an explosion, just not people.
And then in Monty Python,
dude,
I don't know if anybody actually blows up, but they get launched off a bridge, and that's pretty close for me.
Well, there are a lot of explosions. There's a holy hand grenade, for one, and then there's the pyromancer guy that does a lot of explosions.
Yeah, Tim the Enchanter, baby.
Yes, and then launching off the bridge. So honestly, I think I'm gonna go with. Ooh, this is tough. I think I'm gonna go with a 3.99.
I think I'll give it a 2 because nobody actually blows up. I don't think, but they do get launched off a bridge.
So very different scores.
But back to Ghostbusters, which somebody does blow up. I think I don't remember who, but I feel like somebody did. Anyways. Ghostbusters, right? It opens in the library. Stuff's going crazy. Librarian gets scared. And then we go to Peter Venkman, who is arguably the main character of the film. But he's in like his psychology office doing his psychology thing, and he's obviously a con man or he's a ladies' man. I don't know if he's necessarily a con man. But he's got 2 little kids in front of him because he's at a college. They're college students.
Well, yeah, not little kids.
Whatever, dude. So he's got a guy in front of him and a girl in front of him, and he's testing their ESP ability. So the dude is like, I think it's this, and then he's like, oh, Venkman's like, oh, sorry, you're wrong. And then the girl says, well, I think it's this, and Venkman's like, you're right, again, even though she's wrong every single time. And so they do that for a little bit, and then the dude actually gets one right, but then Venkman still shocks him. And then right after that, Ray comes in the room, he's like, bro, we got to go check out this library. Spengler's already down there. So they hurry off to the library, and they start investigating, doing their little thing. And they see a ghost, and that freaks them out, so they run out of the library. So they get back to their little place at the college, and then Dane's like, hey, guys, y'all are idiots. You're fired. And they're like, oh, shucks. So then they decide to be paranormal investigators on the side. No, they just decide to do it straight on, bro.
Yes.
And then they go to this firehouse, and they're like, all right, I guess we'll take it. So they take the fire station, and then they start hunting down ghosts all over the city. And then there's this lady named Dana Barrett who goes to her apartment, and sees an ad for the Ghostbusters, and she's like, whatever, dude. And turns off her TV. But then when she goes to her kitchen, her eggs start getting cooked on the counter, and then she opens the fridge, and this voice is like, hey, bro, come see Zool. And so she doesn't like it. And she goes to the Ghostbusters, like, hey, bro, guys, can you help me out? And they're like, maybe. And then the Ghostbusters go to this hotel, and they get Slimer, and Venkman gets slimed, and they're like, bro, this will be $5,000. And the dude's like, I'm not paying that. And they're like, okay, we can just put him back. But then he pays it because he doesn't want a ghost in his hotel. Are you crazy? And then we get this super cool, funky montage. And this dude's like, have you talked to Elvis? And how's he doing? And then we get back to Dana Barrett, and something else happens. I don't really remember what happens exactly right after that.
The doggies.
Right. The demon dog bear cougar things.
They break out of their little stone.
Right.
And one goes after Dana Barrett.
Goes after Dana, and one goes to Lewis's party. Who Lewis, my man Lewis, Dana did him dirty. All right.
I agree.
At the party for like a few seconds, and arguably she wouldn't have even been turned into the keymaster or the gatekeeper, whichever one she was.
She's the gatekeeper.
But nonetheless, she didn't do that. She did my man Lewis dirty. So she gets turned into the gatekeeper, and Lewis gets turned into the keymaster, and they're both running. Well, Lewis is running around New York City causing a ruckus until Egon gets his hands on him. And Venkman goes to check on Dana because they were supposed to have a little date, but she's kind of possessed by the gatekeeper. And he's like, all right, bro, you got too many people in there. Angel floating above the bed. I don't know what's going on, but this ain't it. And then he calls Egon, and he's like, hey, Egon, I got a problem. And Egon's like, yo, I got a problem too. We should get these two guys together. And then, so backtrack a little bit. Earlier in the movie, Walter Peck comes in. He's like, bro, I don't like you guys. So
he's with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency.
And he does not like the Ghostbusters because he thinks they're going to make a mess, which arguably they are. But
he's like, y'all are a bunch of fakers.
Well, yeah, he thinks that they're a bunch of fakers. I think he believes that they're dumping like toxic waste or something somehow. So that's why. And then later in the movie comes back. He's like, I got a warrant, bro. And he shuts off the power grid, but replaces out all the ghosts. And then the gatekeeper and the keymaster get together, and they turn back into dogs. And then Zool gets released, and the Ghostbusters are like, no, man, because then they get arrested, and they have to go to the mayor, and the mayor's like, hey, stop doing what you're doing. And then Venkman's like, hey, dude, if we save the city, you just saved a bunch of voters. And he's like, all right, I'll let you out, and you can save the city. So they go to Zool, and Zool's like, are you a god? And Ray's like, no. And then Winston said, Ray, if someone ever asks if you're a god, you say yes. So that's a little piece of advice for you out there, listeners. Always say you're a god. Never say you're not a god. And then she's like, all right, fine. I'll be whatever you want me to be. And so everyone's like, well, I'm not going to think of anything. And then Ray's like, well, I'm going to think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man because he's real fluffy. And then everyone's like, oh, you idiot. So then he comes in, and then what do? They have to cross the streams, which Egon established earlier in the movie never to do.
Never cross the streams.
You're going to blow up.
Blow your face off.
Dimension or something. It's going to be bad. All right? Like a really big Twinkie kind of bad.
Microbliner.
That is a direct quote. And then they beat the guy, and they saved the day. Did I miss anything? I don't know. I was talking really fast.
I think you hit everything.
All right.
But wait, one question about the plot I do have. Do we figure out what happens to all the other ghosties that got released?
They're just out and about.
Is that what sets up the second movie?
Nope.
I know it's the demon
baby. By the second movie, the Ghostbusters are out of work because there's no more ghosts.
All right, that time, okay.
That's how the second movie starts.
Okay.
So I guess after they round up the rest of the ghosts that got loose, I'm assuming this is not confirmed at all, not canon. This is just me talking, so don't get mad at me, guys. Between the two movies, I assume that they rounded up the rest of the ghosts, but then because they put Zool up, or Gozer or whatever the big guy was, then they are like, well, there's no more ghosts, so I guess we're out of business. But then, yeah, there's like a painting, and Dana has a baby, and stuff happens. But we're not going to talk about that movie today. We're here to talk about Ghostbusters. So, Jake, what's going on in this movie? What's it about?
So there's two things when I think about this initially that I think this movie's about. Number one of the things is fate.
Okay.
But again, like all plots, you could say like there's a little bit of fate involved. Venkman
does actually have that line where he's like, "Call it fate," and then he says other stuff. I don't remember what else he says, but it's like right after they got kicked out, and he's like, "You can call it fate or whatever, but I think we were destined to go out on our own."
Well, it's the scene when they're on the bridge after they got kicked out, and it's him and Ray, and he's drinking,
as all great men do.
But what I really think the movie is about is kind of reliability of authority.
Okay.
And kind of like deciding on your own what you believe, I guess, and being like learning how to determine whether or not an authority is reliable.
So, are you saying like authority as the government is an authority, or authority
of like a scientific authority, or like a professional or an expert in a field? Like if you have a plumber, or you go to a mechanic and you tell the mechanic, "Oh, I think this is what's wrong," and the mechanic goes, "Actually, this is what's wrong." You know, you have to decide, okay, do I believe him or do I not? And kind of developing that ability to discern.
So with that argument, after seeing the movie, do you think the Ghostbusters are a good authority?
No.
Because they are told throughout the film, like even just either from the mayor or from the Walter Peck, the environmental guy, or from the dean in the very beginning, nobody really believes what they're doing is true.
Well, I agree. But also I think the very establishment of the company Ghostbusters is a perfect example of an unreliable authority. Because when they go to the ghost at the library, they're having this discussion about what they should do, and it's like they're all like, "I don't know. What do we do? How do we catch it?" Nobody knows because they've never done it.
Right. So it's kind of like a trial by error kind of thing.
Yes, and so I think that like the very fact that the Ghostbusters don't know what they're doing, yet they are the only ones who are able, quote unquote, to do something about it. You know, we don't have a choice but to trust them.
Right.
Maybe it's more about maybe it's more about like the monopolization of like a certain industry, maybe.
Well, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. As far as authority goes, I didn't get that what you said, but I did make a note of a few times people don't really believe in the Ghostbusters, or what the Ghostbusters are doing is genuine. And there is obviously some truth to that, because our first introduction of the characters, specifically Venkman, is when he's faking or lying to that kid during the psychological test.
Yeah.
So at the very least, Venkman, if not the rest of the team, are presented as con men.
Well, I would.
As far as their authority on certain subjects, this is kind of a passing joke, but Egon at one point was going to drill into his own head to like see what was going on there, and Venkman stopped him, but then Egon's like, "That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me." So they do believe in these, even though they are scientists, they seem to believe in these things that would be considered illogical by most people.
Yeah, and I would say that part of that is just kind of the time that they were in.
Well, I don't know. I would say even the rest of the movie, everyone else seems to be thinking that they're kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's true. And it's definitely not hard to believe that it's a little unbelievable, the whole idea of like ghosts, because like Like think about like now. Like if somebody says they saw a ghost, you'd be like, Psh, okay. When in reality, it could totally be true. Do you believe in ghosts or like specters?
Like actually,
Yeah.
see, I don't know. I think I agree that if there were to be a ghost, they would need to be trapped here for some reason, like they have unfinished business.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that like if every time someone dies, they would turn into a ghost. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
think I would believe of some existence, but I don't know what the exact rules are. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I believe in ghosts on the same premise that like I believe about aliens. Is that like well for aliens it's like there's no way that there aren't aliens. With ghosts like sure like they exist. Why not
Right.
believe in them? You know? It's kind of like Pascal's wager a bit, where his is about Christianity. Like there's no reason to not believe in God, and so I guess for my belief is like there's no reason to not believe in ghosts.
So they must be real.
Well, so they can be real,
Okay.
not they must.
So basically, you're not a believer or a denier. But you're like, if they're real, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yes. Anyway,
Okay.
back to Ghostbusters. Sorry.
Well, hold on. It's. I'm gonna say one of the things we say so many times. It's interesting that you say that because one of the like cornerstone themes of this movie, I think, is the power of belief. And I don't know if there's like a psychological term for this, but what I mean when I say this is that if you can convince yourself that something is real, then it will feel real no matter what the true reality is. And I guess that maybe that it would be considered a delusion. But throughout the movie, as I was saying, people doubt the Ghostbusters, but the Ghostbusters, as we see, they are truthful. Ghosts do exist, and they do know how to trap them. And then the movie culminates in like the ultimate power of belief because and I'm talking about the climax at the end when Ray thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He tried to think of something that he believed would be safe and wouldn't harm the town. And while that wasn't necessarily true, it was his belief in the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that conjured him into our reality.
Okay. So maybe it's like the I'm not gonna say it, but the thing that's like from like Peter Pan, where if you say it, then a fairy dies or whatever.
Yeah, are you talking about from Hook,
Oh, is it from Hook?
the live action one?
Is it from Hook?
I don't exactly know what you're talking about, but I think
They're
it is.
like, oh, blank isn't real, and then they die.
Yeah, I think that's in Hook.
Okay, but you know what I'm
But
talking about now? I'm not gonna
regardless,
say
it's
it because.
I don't know the word, but I think I remember what you're talking about from the movie.
Okay, all right. So yeah, so maybe it's like the power of manifestation through like belief. Is that what you're kind of
Yeah,
getting?
because
Okay.
even like there's a few lines throughout the movie, like when they're going to the hotel, and that guy's like, "What are you, some kind of cosmonaut?" And they're like, "No, we're exterminators." And he's like, "Well, that must be a big cockroach." So like he doesn't really like doubt that they're exterminators. And then later, or I guess I don't know. I don't know exactly when this happens, but when Dana comes to them, Egon says she's telling the truth, or at least she thinks she is.
Yes. Well, so there's that, and there's also, if you want to go back to the idea of delusion, there's when they're talking to the librarian, and Venkman's like, the first thing he does is he asks, like, have you been drinking? Are you on drugs? Do you have a history of delusion in your family?
Well, he talks a lot about schizophrenia and in the scenes leading up to and immediately following the library scene.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I kind of want to talk about this. I kind of want to talk about the idea of confirmation bias. And I think that that plays a huge role, especially in the beginning of the movie. Because when you talk about con men, I think that definitely um, Stance and Egon, or Ray and Egon, are definitely more of an authority than Venkman. And we definitely see this when they just kind of like the idea of belief that Ray and Egon believe more in their work than Venkman believes in his work. And so we see this when we go into the library. Egon and Ray have all this equipment, and they're all like, they in their mind, they're going into it with, there's a ghost here. While Venkman goes into it with the idea, this lady's crazy.
Well, and even, sorry, I need more Cheetos. Even when they're in prison later, obviously everything has been real. But you're talking about how Egon and Ray are more of an authority in the prison. They're like talking about what's going to happen. And then I don't remember. I just blanked on his name. Peter Venkman says something, and then Ray's like, "You never studied." So even though he has a PhD in psychology, he quote, never studied according to the other people. So he is not only not an authority in the sense that he doesn't believe like they do, he's not an authority in that he didn't get his degree the way that they did. So he's not as well learned.
Exactly. And so that's kind of where the idea, like trusting authority. Like, sure, they are all an authority, quote unquote, in this field, but two of them have done the work and one of them hasn't. So in that, there is a really, really later when, what's his name?
Winston?
Yeah, later when Winston comes in, there's two things on. Winston comes in and he is being interviewed, and he's talking to Janine, and she's like, "Do you believe in this, and this?" And Winston says, "If there's a steady paycheck, I'll believe anything you want." So in reality, there is a 50% chance that an authority you are talking to is not an actual authority.
They're just in it for the money.
Right. Or I guess maybe in Venkman's case, the ladies.
Oh yeah, baby.
So, you know, a 50% chance, that is horrible. That is horrible odds.
Never tell me the odds.
They're horrible, Thomas. Like, think about, like, I mean, 50% chance, depending on what it is, isn't always horrible. But when there are only 4 authorities and an entire field of something, field of science, and 2 of them are unreliable,
right?
That is an insane number.
Well, the thing about Winston is he brings up the Bible at one point when they're talking in the car. So I don't know if I would say, yeah, I don't know if I would say that he is an unreliable authority necessarily, but he has a different perspective. So as far as the scientific community is concerned, he might be unreliable, but to the religious community, he might be more reliable than Ray or Egon.
Sure. And that can even go further into the unreliability of authority. Because, like, if we talk about science in general, you know, there are still a lot of, like, religious people out there who, like, don't trust science because it conflicts with the Bible. And so then you might have an authority who is more religious than scientific, who ends up feeding their following false information or not 100% accurate information.
Sounds like a president I know.
You know him? You met him?
Yep.
Oh, shoot.
All right. Back to you said something about Revelations?
Yes.
What's interesting about that scene, and I don't know if this doesn't have like a greater meaning, I don't think, but Ray mentions Revelation 7:12. And then he starts quoting a Bible verse. But once I finished the movie, I looked up Revelation 7:12.
Right.
And it is completely not the verse that he says. Whatever he says is either it's made up or it's from a different part of the Bible. But Revelation 7:12 is something completely different.
So it says, this is Ray. This is Ray saying this. And he says, I remember Revelation 7:12. And I looked as he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became as black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood. And then Winston says, "And the seas boiled as the skies fell."
And
Let's look up
look up the
Revelation
actual
7:12.
That Ray's version of the verse is kind of what happens at the end of the movie, because there is a minor earthquake and like the road opens up in front of the hotel, and then the skies turn black because of Gozer. Now all the other stuff I'm not sure actually happens.
Yeah.
But the actual verse is completely different.
Yeah, this is real different. Saying, "Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." You know what? Let me go get. I'm gonna go get my King James version. And I'm gonna read it out of that. So you entertain the boys.
All right. Well, so that verse, the actual verse of Revelation 7:12, seems to me that it is an uplifting of God and like a praise of God, which would still kind of work in this film because you're facing this apocalyptic threat. For some people, especially religious people, the only way through that would be to rely on God and to pray to him and just hope for the best.
All right, what are we looking at? 7:12.
Yeah, Revelation 7:12.
So I'm actually gonna look up. Well, do you have your laptop like next to you?
I mean,
okay, I'll do that too. Hold on, let me look at this. So the name of the chapter is "The Sealed of Israel," and 7:12. Oh, okay. So the passage it's from is titled "A Multitude from the Great Tribulation,"
which that sounds a lot like what would have been happening in Ghostbusters.
I'm gonna start reading. I'm just gonna read. This is super short. I'm just gonna read this.
All right.
After these things, I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." All the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne, and worshiped God, saying, "Amen. Blessings and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." So, okay. So this seems like, yeah, like you said, a more praising God kind of thing, which is kind of like what Gozer wants.
Yeah, he wants to be idolized.
Right. Let me look up what this verse is.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so this is from Revelation 6:12. Okay, so you know what? Okay. That might have just been like a
script error.
Messed that up. Yeah. But I'm not going to believe
they kept it in.
They did.
So it's a weird coincidence. But you're saying what Ray says is an actual verse from the Bible.
Yeah, it's Revelation 6:12, and it's opening the 7 seals.
Okay.
And
so maybe
the 6th seal is cosmic disturbances.
So maybe that was just supposed to show that Ray is not very well versed in the Bible, whereas Winston is, because even though it was the wrong verse, Winston still picked it up.
Yeah.
So, one of two things here. Either A, it's what I just said, or they wanted the audience to still see the second verse about praise because of how it relates to Gozer.
Yeah. That's an interesting. I'm glad you caught that, because I definitely did not.
Well, and I'm not like a super Bible man, but I just looked up the verse because I was curious to know if it was the actual verse from the Bible or not. Because I'm not sure. You probably know this, Jake. I'm not sure if everyone listening does. In Pulp Fiction, there's a very famous Bible verse that is uttered.
Yeah.
But that is not found in the Bible ever. what Jules says in Pulp Fiction is not an actual Bible verse. So I was curious to see if what Ray says was or not.
Well, so what Winston says, from what I just read, I read KJV. So he may have been reading from a different translation, but what Winston said was not in the verse. What did Winston say? Winston says, "And the seas boiled and the skies fell." So it may just be a different translation.
Or this could be like a super deep rejection of authority or whatever you said earlier.
Trusting authority, reliability of authority.
Yeah. So it's like breaking down the reliability. They just set up that maybe Winston could be seen as an authority in the religious community, whereas the rest of the Ghostbusters represent the scientific community. But then Ray remembers the verse. Although he says the wrong verse, he says the verse, I'm assuming word for word.
So, sorry, what? Say it again.
I'm assuming Ray says the verse word for word.
Yes.
Okay, so then we just established that Winston could be the biblical authority, but then Ray says the verse word for word, and then Winston messes it up. And to the regular audience member, you wouldn't know that unless you looked up the verses. But upon a deeper look, and we're not even going that much deeper, we just like flip through a few pages, then it starts to feel like maybe that does mean something.
Well, let me read. I pulled up the script from just that little scene right here. And so Winston starts out. They're in the car. I think they're driving to Gozer. I think they're driving to that building. And so it starts off with Winston. He says, "Hey Ray, do you believe in God?" Never met him. Yeah, well, I do, and I love Jesus' style. The entire roof cap is made out of magnesium tungsten alloy. What are you still involved with over there? These blueprints are so blah, blah, blah. And then back to Winston. Hey, Ray, do you remember something in the Bible about the last days when the dead would rise from the grave? I remember Revelation 7:12. We just read that, and the seas boiled by that. And then they both say Judgment Day. And then Ray, every ancient religion has its own myth about the end of the world. Winston, myth? Ray, has it ever occurred to you that maybe the reason we've been so busy lately is because the dead have been rising from the grave?
And then they say the verse, right?
No, that's the verse earlier. But, so this is 1980s, okay? And they're what, in New York?
Yes. That is very clear.
So I think that race does play a little bit in here. Because number one, Winston's the only black guy, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, fun fact, and remember what you're about to say, I don't want to derail you. Originally, the role was supposed to go to Eddie Murphy of Winston, but Eddie Murphy turned it down. So then the role of Winston got cut. He was supposed to be in the movie for, I'm assuming, the whole time, but then his role got cut down because Eddie Murphy didn't say yes to it. And then they got Ernie Hudson to play Winston instead. So it was written to be a black character.
Well, yeah. Okay. So then that may support the point I'm about to make. So talking on authority. So I am going to throw out there that it's more likely to believe that Winston is religious more than it is easier to believe that like Ray is religious, especially since he's a scientist and Winston isn't. So I think it's a lot easier to believe that Winston would know this verse. That he would, not only would he know this verse, well, he would know this verse, and then that's why he brought it up, and because he kind of is a lot more religious than Ray. But then they both get the verse wrong.
Right. Ray with the number, and then Winston with the actual quote.
Right. Well, I mean, it goes. I mean, Winston had the number wrong too because he continued with that verse.
Right.
So there is another instance of false authority.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. But the whole notion of false authority that you picked up on, I think, is fascinating because I picked up on a whole different look at authority in this film. So the Ghostbusters are, I would say, pretty obviously working class citizens, especially after they get fired from working at the college. And constantly throughout the film, whether it be the environmental guy or the scene with the mayor, a government office is trying to put them down and say, what you're doing is wrong. You can't do it anymore. So, and I wrote this down before rewatching it this time because I remember the scene with the mayor and with Walter Peck, who's the environmental guy. I wrote down bureaucracy, government trying to keep the common man down. And that's kind of a theme. That's a theme I think is present in Ghostbusters, but it's also a theme that is present throughout history. You know, people are like, we got to stick it to the man and do it our own way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that shows up with Gozer too, obviously, since Gozer wants to rule everybody. But I will say it's interesting. So yes, the college whatever guy fires him, right? Call it fate or whatever you want. But that as soon as they hit this discovery is when they're let go of their prior ties and are able to do Ghostbusters. So that gives them an opportunity. So even though they're put down, it gives them a better opportunity. And then with the Josh Peck or whatever his name is, the EPA guy, yeah, he attempts to put them down, and yet in doing so, it raises the attention to the issue that they're having with their containment cell.
Oh, are you talking about the first time he comes or the second time?
The first time.
Okay.
And so it's interesting that what puts them down allows them to move forward.
So in a way, Ghostbusters is kind of a redemption story. Even though they don't, it's never really occurred to me before, but they are kind of the underdogs. Because as we established, really nobody believes in them, especially in the beginning. And then we have the government and the dean at the college trying to put them down, being like, you are not good at what you do. This is a hoax. No one believes you. But they're constantly coming back and saving the day. And I would say, even though we did not watch Ghostbusters 2, and it's been a while since I've seen it, the second movie is even more so an underdog movie because they have been out of work for however long. I don't know how many years were in between the first movie and the second movie. But then they come back and they save the day again, arguably on a larger scale because the Statue of Liberty is literally marching through the streets of New York.
Yeah, but that's not as scary as a Stay Puft Marshmallow.
No. Which, fun fact about that, at the end of the movie, when all that goop is like falling down, that's shaving cream.
Yes, I was actually thinking about that when I was watching. I was like, that's got to be shaving cream.
So that they spent a buttload of money on shaving cream, bro.
I got a fun fact.
Shoot.
The Slimer is a symbolic representation, or like a whatever representation. It's based on
John Belushi.
John Belushi, yeah. Why'd you do that?
I had to show everyone who's the real smart boy.
Why would you do that to me?
Which I don't know if that's ever been confirmed, but it's pretty widely accepted that Slimer is supposed to be the ghost of John Belushi. Which, because when this movie was originally written, it was written by Dan Aykroyd to be a vehicle for him and John Belushi. I believe this came out after Blues Brothers. So he obviously really liked working with him there. But then after John Belushi's death, obviously it took a different path and became more of an ensemble movie, which might actually play into the power of belief angle I was looking at before. Because initially the script was something almost completely different than what it ended up being. But because the studio or the people behind it believed in the project, they tweaked it for several years, and then it came out with this, which, as I said earlier, is my favorite comedy movie of all time. So if it had not gone through those tweaks, and if they had not believed in the project the way that they did, it probably would not have achieved the status that it has today.
Okay, so it was confirmed. This is a quote from Steve Johnson, who was he designed Slimer.
Okay.
And this quote, he said, "So I pulled out a stack of headshots of John Belushi, poured a gram of cocaine on it, and started chopping up lines. Literally thought that John Belushi's ghost came to him to help him out."
All right.
So this is from a whole article, but that's just a little snippet.
Confirmed.
Who's the smart boy now?
We'll see next week.
All right, fair enough.
So I had one more thing written down as far as a theme or whatever the movie's about or whatever you want to talk about. And it's a quote from one of my favorite shows of all time. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And that quote
Wait,
is...
Are you saying that there's a quote in Always Sunny?
Yeah, that
is
I
this
think
quote?
is a theme of this movie.
Okay.
So the quote is, "Science is a liar sometimes." And that is a theme which I think is in Ghostbusters and oodles
Okay.
of the film.
Okay. I didn't even think about this. But so they're scientists, but ghosts are paranormal.
Right.
And not considered science.
Right.
All right, go ahead.
So science is a liar sometimes. And for you listening at home, if you've seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, you know what I'm talking about. Imagine that I'm pointing at a little board like Mac was in that episode. So first off, you have the don't cross the streams rule, which is set up very early in the movie, and Ray's like, it's bad, or Egon is like, it's bad, and we'll all blow up, or something's going to happen.
Well, and Venkman, so on that, Venkman makes the point of, like, how do we know the difference between if it's good or it's bad? When he says
right.
that.
So they don't even really trust each other. But well, obviously later in the film, they cross the streams. It's an iconic moment, but none of the stuff Egon said was going to happen happened. So science is a liar sometimes. Secondly, when they're trapping Slimer, and I believe this is the only time we see the ghost trap in action, Ray says, "Don't look at the trap," and Egon immediately looks in the middle of the trap, and he's like, "I'm looking at the trap, Ray," but then again, nothing happens. So that's twice, almost in the same scene, that they've broken their own rules. And then this last one is a quote from the movie, and it's not exactly "science is a liar" sometimes, but it's my dad's favorite quote from the film, so I had to say it in this podcast. It's in the library, and Ray says, "Listen, do you smell something?" So that's a line that went over my head for several years, but he's saying "listen," which you do with your ears, and then he says, "Do you smell something?" So he proposes a question, a hypothesis, if you will. I think I just used that word wrong, but that doesn't matter. Of listen, but then he asks the question, "Do you smell something?" Which are two completely unrelated things.
Oh my
gosh. Again, these so-called scientists very clearly don't know what they're doing and have a very tenuous grasp on the English language.
Oh my gosh. I never would have caught that.
Yeah. No, and it gets me every time now. Because it's in the library and he's just like, "Listen, you smell that?" And like you don't even register
no.
that those two things don't go together.
When you said it just then, like when you're bringing it up, I was like, oh, is that it? He just wanted to say a quote, and then you were like, that's too, and I didn't. Whoo! There you go with authority again. You just can't.
Yeah, science is a liar sometimes.
And so on authority, I think it's super important to point out. I didn't even think about this, that specters and ghosts and stuff are paranormal, or
not scientific.
Right, not only not scientific, but honestly, possibly religious, in a sense.
Right, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at with Winston possibly being a better authority than any of the other three.
Which we can talk about that and be like, okay, so watching this movie, we believe that the original scientists are the authority, but in reality, it's Winston. So even me talking about how he's not an authority is wrong, because Winston possibly, like you just said, is the best authority. Dude,
So what I've learned today is that Ghostbusters is like an onion. It has many layers.
Which the original name for the Slimer was
Shrek.
Yes. No, Onion Head Ghost.
There you go. It all comes back. It all comes together. They're trying to tell us.
Ghostbusters is an onion head ghost, just like Shrek.
Just like Shrek.
And think about the similarities, like how they look.
Slimer and Shrek?
No, Onion Head Ghost and Shrek. The original name for the Slimer.
I mean, they're both green.
They are both green, and they both have big arms. So, what do we decide?
Can't trust authority, man.
Can't trust authority.
Can't trust authority.
Or maybe that the authority you think is the authority is not the authority, and you should look at a different authority to be the authority.
So, don't trust authority, but also keep an open mind. Maybe you should trust them. I don't
know. So we've covered the real stuff, or the stuff we think is real.
Potatoes.
Yeah, the meaning under the surface.
Now we're going to talk about.
Okay, there's a few things I want to talk about that are not deep. Number one, I just want to say that I agree with you that Venkman is the main character because he's definitely the black sheep of the group.
Sorry, I know I'm kind of interrupting you. Even on the DVD I have, on the cover of the DVD, it has all 4 Ghostbusters on it. But Venkman is a step ahead of the other Ghostbusters.
Well, he's also on the Bill Murray.
He's like in charge.
He's also Bill Murray, which, That's true. Caddyshack, Groundhog Day, blah, 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 blah. But there's a few okay, so the Stay Puft Marshmallow occurs all throughout the movie.
Yes. And actually, I meant to mention that. So as far as the power of belief or whatever, maybe it wasn't Ray that conjured up the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Maybe it was the audience through the use of subliminal imaging throughout the movie. Because the 2 times I noticed it was when it's on Dana's counter after he gets the groceries.
Yep.
There's an ad on a building somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
So subconsciously, this is placed in your head without you even realizing it. So maybe the audience is really to blame for conjuring up Stay Puft at the end of the movie.
Okay, and then the next one is
think about that.
Yeah, think about that. Yeah. Next one, Post Malone is a time traveler. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. June 26th of 29th of 2020, Post Malone is a time traveler. But yes, the guy with the beard.
Which is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a scene, it's during the montage, and this news reporter is like, blah, 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 Ghostbusters, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what he says. Because the whole time I was watching this dude in the background who has a beard, and he's just stroking his beard, looking at the camera, and he's feeling himself, dude.
But he looks exactly like Post Malone.
Well, he didn't have any tats as far as I saw.
Well, so maybe we've got a little bit of a back to the future thing going on here.
Maybe it's Mr. Post Malone, Post Malone's father.
Maybe, but it's when Post Malone was younger, but he time traveled into the 80s, lived there for a little bit,
and then came back.
Then he came back. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what's up.
So, Ghostbusters, which came out before Back to the Future, by the way. So maybe Post Malone inspired Back to the Future because of his appearance in Ghostbusters.
Maybe Michael J. Fox is Post Malone's dad. Or son.
100% agree. Or both.
Or both. Because time travel. Infinity War is wrong. Or
100%.
Endgame is wrong.
Whatever. Same thing.
Yeah. The next one, this is actually kind of interesting, is so the little portal thing that Zool or Gozer or whatever is in, at the top of that skyscraper, and where the doggies are at, is a huge skyscraper. Somebody had to fund that skyscraper. Somebody had to build that.
Are you talking about in the movie or in real life?
In the movie.
Yeah.
So there were people who were in charge of building that skyscraper who believed in Zool and Gozer and whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of like another thing about like authority. You
Is
never
that
know.
did they? I thought they said that in the movie.
What? That there was like a
That
secret.
yeah.
Did
Like
they?
when they're pretty sure they say that when they're in jail. Anyways, it doesn't matter. You just said it here, so whether they
Yeah.
did or not, now you know.
Now you know. Also, Gozer. Pretty sure that's Ziggy Stardust.
Beautiful.
Do you know what Ziggy Stardust looks like?
Oh yeah. He's
Dude,
my main man.
let me look. Gozer from Ghostbusters, and then Ziggy Stardust.
So what we're saying is Ghostbusters is the zeitgeist for all of pop culture.
Yes, in the 80s. Yeah.
No, just period. Just Post Malone too, baby.
Oh, yes, you're right. But dude, look at like, but for real, like look at like Ziggy Stardust
No, I agree.
and
But Ziggy
Gozer.
Stardust
Like
is
just
a
look
god.
at that. Like, let me see. Is there like a Gozer and Ziggy Stardust?
That should be the name of our band. Gozer and
Gozer
Ziggy.
and Ziggy Stardust. Gozer. Yeah, dude. It's like, wait, who plays Gozer? Is it David Bowie?
I don't think so.
Hold on
I
a second.
feel like I would have recognized him.
Hold on. Well, I guess it's true. Hold on. Here we go. Wait.
While Jake's looking that up, be sure
Whoa!
to check out the
Oh!
SoundCloud.
Okay. I found a video while I was looking, and it said 3 things you didn't know about the Ghostbusters villain Gozer. And the title card was Ziggy Stardust.
Is he based on Ziggy?
Hold on. Let me look. Yes! Gozer's appearance was inspired by David Bowie.
There you go.
Which I was gonna talk. So Gozer says I can, like the idea like I'll be whatever you want, and so Gozer definitely looks like a girl. She's got titties or whatever. But Venkman keeps saying he, right?
Yeah.
And so Ziggy Stardust was an androgynous character. And so this guy, all right, let me give shout out to USA Today. That's the channel on YouTube. Said that Gozer was meant to be an androgynous character inspired by David Bowie.
Beautiful.
All right, so that's yeah. I wrote that down. I saw Gozer, was like, is that Ziggy Stardust? And then there you go. Okay, but the most interesting theory I've got here has to do with Ninja Turtles.
Throw it at me.
So here's what I think. I think that Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles exist in the same universe.
It's the zeitgeist.
Mainly, I was thinking about how the final fight relates to Ninja Turtles.
Are you talking about a Ninja Turtles movie or just like the comic?
No, the Ninja Turtles movie from 1990.
Okay.
So I didn't remember. So who plays? So Sigourney Weaver, right?
Is she Amy or whatever her name is?
April O'Neil?
Yeah.
No. It's Judith Hoag, but they look really close. They look like the same person almost. And so I was like, oh, are they the same person? And I looked it up and no, it was a different actor. But I mean, if you look, the similarity is uncanny, I think. But the main reason I was thinking about this was because the final fight with Gozer is very much alike the final fight with Shredder. Just there's 4 people, right, that are each uniquely different, or 4 characters that are each uniquely different. And the beginning of the fight is kind of slow, and they're sucking it up. But then they come together as a team and overcome the foe, right? And that's originally what made me think that they're kind of similar. But then I was thinking about Dana Barrett and April O'Neil. So what I think is that Dana Barrett went into witness protection and became April O'Neil.
Is that it?
That's it.
Well, think about it.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I have not. I actually have never seen the Ninja Turtles movie, so I can't neither confirm nor deny Jake's theory. But I'm gonna support him because he's my bro. I'm gonna say it's 100% true.
I mean, dude, just look. It's unreal.
So 100% of Al Pacino's prison scene believes that April O'Neil is Dana Barrett. We believe that Ziggy Stardust
yes.
is Gozer.
Yes.
We believe that Post Malone is a time traveler, and that Marty McFly is Post Malone's dad and son.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. When the truth is revealed, don't forget where you heard it first.
So, last thing we have to do before we sign off or whatever, you gotta rate the movie, bro.
All right. So there's a huge explosion. So at the very end of this movie. So I gotta give it a 5 out of 5.
You know, Stay Puft?
Yes. It's massive. It's not as many as Ready or Not, but all those were like little explosions. This one was and there's like fire and it gets blown away.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but is he a person?
How dare you say this, Steve? But it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
I might have to give it a 4.5.
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Who are you to judge, Thomas?
I'm not a believer, man. Not a believer.
And that's what this movie is about.
Not being a believer?
Or being a believer. Either one.
Choose your side. We're going to fight at noon.
All right.
All right, well, that's all we have for this week, I think. All right, Jake, you want to tell the people where they can talk to us, or they can talk crap to us? They can tell us that they hate us or love us or whatever they want to do.
Yeah, if you agree or disagree, if you've got some comments, if you've got your own opinions, you can hit us up on Twitter at PacinoPod, or you can send us an email over at pacinopodcast@gmail.com.
And I'm going to disagree with Jake. I don't want to hear your own opinions. I don't care. So send those to Jake.
I do.
All right, well, I'm going to go with one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, Winston Zeddemore. I love this town. Stout and sauerkraut.
Stout and sauerkraut, y'all.